In this video, we're going to go through and install the Android developer tools for Linux. Now we'll be using Ubuntu Linux 14.04 for this, but a lot of the concepts in this video should hopefully apply to other Linux distributions as well. So we're going to go through and, as I say, install the Android developer tools, which includes Eclipse, I should say, and we'll do some basic configuration just to get you up and running. So let's get into this right now. Okay, so I'm going to log in to my Linux installation. First things first, we want to make sure that you're running the latest or the right version of the Java Developer Kit. So I'm going to open a shell, go into Terminal and type Java space minus version. Press enter. Now you can see there on the screen it's got Java version 1.8.0_25. Now that's effectively when it says 1.8, that's Java version 8. So you do want to make sure you've got Java version 8. If you've got an older version or you're getting an error message there and not seeing Java, make sure you go back to the video in this section where I showed you how to install the Java Development Kit, because Eclipse will not work without that step. Okay, so that's done. Now the next thing we need to do with Ubuntu, we need to load some tools depending on what environment you're on. So we need to know whether you're running the 32-bit version of Ubuntu or the 64-bit. So to do that, go into your system settings, go into details, and check your OS type. You can see here that I'm running the 64-bit edition, so that's the tools and the configuration that I'll need to do in the following steps. If you're running the 32-bit edition, there's some slight changes. Now, as you can see, I've got on the screen now what you need to do depending on your version. Okay, so if you're on the 32-bit version of Ubuntu, you would type sudo install libgl1-mesa-dev. That's for the 32-bit version of Ubuntu. Now, if you're on a 64-bit version, which I am, it does depend on what version you're running. Now, if you're running Ubuntu 13.04 or earlier, you would type sudo install io32libs. So that's 13.04 or earlier. Or in my case, because I'm running version 14.04, my command that I'm going to be typing in will be sudo install libgl1-mesa-dev:-i386. So I'm going to proceed and do that because that's the right version for my installation. I'm going to type my password. And whoops, I forgot to type before that apt-get. So in all those commands, you're meant to have typed apt-get first, because of course that's the command we need to do the installation. So I'll type that in, and now it's actually working. So unsurprisingly. Okay, so we're going to let it go through and download and configure what it needs to configure. This will take a while to go through. So while that's downloading, we need to consider the Android Developer Tools bundle. Now, Google removed this bundle from their website when Android Studio was released late last year in December 2014. Now, I've got a version and links for you that you can download either the 32-bit version or the 64-bit version of the Android Developer Tools in the next lecture. So the lecture exactly straight after this one. So refer to that for the actual links. I've already downloaded it and put it into my folder. So when this is finished, we're going to go through and extract that and continue the installation. Okay, so you can see that's done. I'm going to leave that open. So again, make sure you've downloaded now the Android Developer Tools. That's right for you by referring to the the lecture after this one. And I'm going to go into my downloads folder because that's where it is for me on this machine. So again, you'll need the Android Developer Tools. Refer to the lecture after this one if you haven't already downloaded it. In my case, I have already downloaded it. It's in my downloads folder, and you can see that I've got the _64, which is the 64-bit edition. So that's right for my installation. So you'll choose the one that's right for you. Now I'm going to unzip that. And I'm just going to extract it to the local folder now because we're going to move it to another folder anyway. Okay, I'm going to close that. Now I'm going to go back to the command line and I'm going to move it. So I'm going to put it into the home folder. So if I have a look where I am now, I'm going to type cd /downloads because that's the folder where I've got the initial installation. And you can see the ADT folder, subfolder or directory is the folder that I've just extracted. So I'm going to move that to my home folder by typing mv. I'm going to type ADT. You can see that's now chosen the whole directory, space, and I'm going to type // to put it into the home folder. Now you could do that with the file manager if you want, but the bottom line is that's copied it. So if I go back there and have a look, home, we've now got a folder called ADT-bundle-linux, etc. So the next thing we need to do now is we need to add or update the path so that the system can find the Android developer tools. So to do that, we're going to go into the home folder again from the command line, cd squiggle or tilde I should say, /ADT. And if I just type in pwd, you can see that is the path on the screen there. So you'll type the same thing and you'll need to know that path because we're going to update that path and use that shortly. So I'm just going to select that all, as you can see there. Oops, I can't do a control C here, so I'll just select it all again and right click it this time. Third time lucky. Okay, I'm going to copy that. Now I'm going to type gedit /profile. That's going to open up the profile.profile file, and right at the end I'm going to type path equals $path : I'm going to paste that in. You can see the home /home/Tim Pachanga, etc. Whatever that it is for you. Then I'm going to type /stk/tools. So that's one of the folders. Then I'm going to type a colon. I'm going to do another paste. Then type /stk/platform-tools. Okay. So that's the command now. That's adding the path, if you will, to the various Android tools that Eclipse will need. So we save that file now. We close it. And just to confirm it's working, if I type ADB now, we should get an error. Currently not installed. But if I type source /profile, press enter, that's now added that path. So if I do 2 up arrows and type ADB, it's now working. So as you can see, it's now added that correctly to the path. So you want to do the same thing to make sure you haven't made a typo with the path. I'm going to exit out of that. And actually what I'm going to do is just close down these windows and I'm just going to log out. You probably don't need to do that, but when changing a system path, I find sometimes there can be weird issues. And log out and a log back in just sort of forces the system to sort of reevaluate the path. Okay, so we've done that now. The next thing we want to do is add a simple little link so that we can open up Eclipse instead of going to the command line all the time. So the way that I found works for me is just to go into the Finder, into the file I should say, I'm talking Mac here, not Linux, and go into the folder where we've done the installation, and go into the Eclipse folder. And I'm going to right click Eclipse and click on Make Link. You can see you've got a link there now. I'm going to copy that. And I'm just going to put that on my desktop, and that's going to be the method I use to access Eclipse. So I'm going to close down this window now, and we should have our link. And I'm just going to rename that to Eclipse, but that's obviously optional. Okay, so at this point we've got Eclipse installed. We've set up the path to the Android developer tools, so we should now be able to double click this and it should start. And it's going to ask us for a default path. I'm going to leave the default, but obviously you'll change the workspace to a folder or a directory, I should say, in Linux terms. That makes sense for you. I'm going to leave it on that as the default. It'll come up initially and ask whether you want to send usage statistics. So I'm going to say no, I don't want to send that. It's up to you whether you want to send those or not. It just comes up the very first time you do an installation. Okay, now I find this does happen sometimes weirdly. You can see I'm clicking on the menus at the top here and it doesn't seem to be working. To fix that, close it down, and start it up again. I don't know why it does that, but usually the second time round you'll find that the menus work normally. Just one of those weird things. Now we've got menus that are working correctly. Okay, a couple of other things we need to check before we're done. Go into the window menu and select Preferences. Go into the Java menu here, or actually expand it. First things first, we want to look in Installed JREs. We want to make sure we have got something set up in there. If that was empty, we would need to click on Add and to add it manually. But in this case, you can see that it's found the Java 8, the Java developer kit that we installed in a previous video, which it needs essentially to work, so that's good. The other thing we need to do is go into Compiler. Just expand this window app a little bit more. Need to change the compliance level to 1.6. The moment it was on 1.4, as you saw, 1.6 equates to the version of Java, and if we leave it on 1.4, it means that Eclipse will flag errors that aren't actually errors in the code. So by setting it to 1.6, you get yourself, or you make sure that you haven't got some problems down the track. Okay, so we're done with that. That's all the basic configuration. The next thing to do would be to go into the window menu, Android SDK Manager. And we just want to make sure we've got the right tools installed. So I'll just let that finish downloading. Now what I suggest you do first is do a deselect all. And we'll just go through and select what we need. So I'm going to click on the Android SDK tools. You should always get the latest version. And incidentally, you should from time to time check this and make sure if there's a newer version, you install that. Make sure you do install this one though, because you'll actually get weird errors if you haven't, due to the bugs that Google sort of introduced late in the game, and they were fixed in 24.0.2. So if you see a higher version, that's okay. Just install that one. Now Android, you can see down here under Android SDK build tools, that's already installed. So we should take the latest update as well, just to make sure we've got the very latest in updates for that. Now down here to Android 5.01, or this number could be higher depending on what when you're reading this, because this is updated automatically when we first started Android SDK Manager. So whatever the latest version is of 5.0. whatever, or 5.1 even, click on that. Then we want to select Documentation, SDK Platform. Samples are optional, I'm going to leave them out. I'm going to select a couple of system images, ARM, and you could optionally select this one as well. Now, incidentally, don't get caught up in the fact that this is a 64-bit version here and think that, okay, I'm running the 64-bit version of Ubuntu, so I need to download that. They are separate things. What we're talking about here with the system images, they are actually the Android emulators that run on the system. So you do not need to download the 64-bit edition. That's something new that just came out with Android Lollipop, a 64-bit edition of Android. So we don't really need that at this stage. So I would suggest you just select the Intel x86 and the ARM as a backup. And also you can do the same. You can click on Google API and the sources for Android SDK. I find that useful if you want to have a look at some of the code and the things that the Google engineers have done, because they make the source code freely available for you to check out, which is pretty neat. Okay, so once we've selected all that, click on Install. I'm going to make sure I'm clicked at the top here and click on Accept License. You can see we've got ticks across the board. If anything isn't ticked, click it individually and click on Accept License. But you can see we've got all green ticks. Install. Now that's going to download and install those various things. Now that's going to chug along and take a little bit of time to finish. So I'll pause the video and we'll come back when it's just about done. Okay, we're back. You can see we're just about finished now. We're just letting it hopefully finish off. It's going to unzip and we're just about done, I think. Okay, so it's come up there and said that it's now been updated and you need to close down. Or it says help run check for updates, but what I normally suggest you do is stop and start. So I'm going to click on OK, because the other thing we want to do is we just want to click deselect all again, make sure nothing's selected, and we want to go back up to here under the Android 4.4W, because you saw that there was something that was installed. So we just want to make sure that none of that is installed, because we won't be using that, and it just sort of messes up our screen in Eclipse. So I'm going to select that and click on delete one package, just to remove that. Okay, at that point we're done. And again, what I suggest you do is close down Eclipse and start it again just to make sure that it sees those changes. Then we're just going to go and make sure that it can see the new version of Android that we've installed. So we go back into the window menu, Preferences, go into Android. You can see there it says Android 5.0.1. Just make it a little bit bigger. And Google API, because we selected both, is also 5.0.1. So at this point we're good to go, and what I suggest you do next is go back to either the Windows section or the Mac section and look at the video that talks about Android virtual devices, because you will need to install an Android virtual device so you can start your testing, etc. Alright, I'll see you in the next video.